The Jesuits keep bringing up Vladimir Putin and accusing me of being this crazy woman who's going after a married Russian president. So I need to address Vladimir Putin. So this video is going to be about how Vladimir Putin came into my life. And it's sort of going to be about how the marriage list got started, period. For those of you who've been keeping up with me, we'll just kind of take up where I left off. Back in 1998, when I was kind of disgusted with Brent Spiner because I found out about Laurie McBride, and I thought he was a coward. I knew he didn't love her, but I didn't understand why he wouldn't get rid of her. And I figured I knew Paramount Studios was in on it, and that Brent was worried possibly about losing his job or something. I figured that out because Brent wasn't telling me why he had Laurie McBride. And at that time, I had Franco Nero in my life. And I've decided my next movie is going to be about Franco Nero and my relationship with Franco Nero and the complications that Jesuits created because of that. But that's a different subject. But in 1998, as I was dealing with Laurie McBride, because she tried to burn down my mobile home twice, I believe. Well, it was a Christmas 1998. I think it was 98 or 97. I think it was 98. Yeah, it was 98 that she tried to burn down my mobile home. And then we moved to Seattle in May 1999. And at that time, I was getting off of my psych meds because I didn't believe that I had bipolar disorder, which was what I had been diagnosed with. And I had successfully gotten off of all of my medicines. And when we were in Seattle, I was having stomach problems. So I went to see a naturopathic physician to deal with the stomach problems. And for some odd reason, she said, Gail, I think if we do spinal extremity correction, we can fix your stomach problems. So I agreed to it. And when I went to her office, she put me on the table and she got my head and she jerked it back. And she induced in me neck spasms. And I was wondering, why is this doctor messing with my neck for stomach problems? I thought maybe I didn't quite understand spinal extremity correction. Looking back, I think she was actually doing chiropractic on me, though she wasn't qualified to do it. I believe she deliberately pulled my neck back in order to induce psychosis in me. She was trying to do something with my neck to induce psychosis. And then she said, Gail, don't you think you ought to go back on your psych meds? And I said, I'm sleeping fine. And I don't understand why you are dropping this suggestion to me. And then she pulled my neck back. And I figured out she was a Jesuit agent. I figured it out later because when I went home that night, I had the worst neck spasms. I had a horrible neck ache. She put something out of alignment in my neck. And I couldn't sleep. I was up all night because of the neck problems. And I actually felt like she induced some sort of psychiatric, I felt like I was getting, I don't know, it was like it was inducing some sort of a psychiatric reaction in me, the way she pulled my neck back. So I thought, oh my God, the Jesuits got her. They weren't happy that I got off my psych meds, so they used her to try to induce psychosis in me. So I went to a chiropractor to try to fix what she did, and they got the chiropractor, and he made it worse. He twisted my neck, and oh, by that time I was nauseated. I wasn't sleeping. And to make a long story short, I did get my neck fixed. I ended up going to it was getting really expensive too because I was using my credit card to pay for this because my husband wouldn't pay for any of this because he considered this natural medicine and he would only pay for the medicine covered by my military health coverage. And when I tried to dispute those charges, it took 3 weeks for the letter to make it to the credit card company. And I had to send 2 or 3 letters, certified return receipts. They all got lost and they never got them. I was beginning to get an inkling. I said, wow, this Laurie McBride, man, she is really good. She's able to get the credit card company, the postal service. She got the doctor, my chiropractor. And I was just getting really excited. How does this woman have so much power? I figured she was behind it because I could tell. Because I never had problems like this until Brent Spiner came in my life, and then this Laurie McBride. I knew Brent didn't do it because even though I thought he was a coward to have Laurie McBride, I knew Brent was not a criminal. So, and I figured that this woman was some sort of a criminal, though I had no idea how much of a criminal she was because Brent wasn't telling me about her. And at that time, Brent and I were communicating through a wiretap that he had on my telephone. And he got the wiretap because in January 1994, after my husband wrote a nasty letter to Paramount threatening to give Brent bad exposure, I got a restraining order type of letter from a Paramount woman attorney who claimed to represent Brent Spiner, and she said nobody in my family could write or communicate with Paramount anymore, and I never did. And I was really upset about that letter, and I spent 3 hours in prayer before God Almighty and asked him to forgive me for communicating with a Hollywood actor who called me up on the phone and made love to me but didn't have the courage to be true to his heart. That's how I felt back then. And I prayed for 3 hours, and then 12 hours later, the Northridge earthquake hit Hollywood. So I was really stunned by that because I didn't feel like, that I was right enough with God to have that happen. I felt like an adulterous woman for being married and encouraging this guy who made love to me on the phone and now had I didn't know about the girlfriend until 96. Anyways, that's how Brent got on the phone. See, that's restraining order did not come from Brent Spiner. This woman who claimed to represent Brent Spiner was actually a Jesuit attorney who wrote the letter claiming to represent Brent, but he didn't sign the letter and he didn't write the letter. It was all a Jesuit plot. But anyways, that's how he got on my line. Because now Brent realized I couldn't write him anymore, and the way he worked around that is he wiretapped my phone, and I could tell because when I picked up the phone, I'd hear noises like, and I'd never heard those noises before, so I thought, oh, Brent is clever. In fact, I thought he arranged the whole restraining order just so he could get on my phone so that I wouldn't get in trouble when I talked to him, so I wouldn't get in trouble with my husband because my husband was threatening me divorce for communicating with Brent. So anyways, Brent and I were communicating on the bugs. Okay, so here we are in 1998. Brent had wiretapped my phone, and I was talking to him through the bug. He said, how do you talk to him through the bugs? Oh, it was really easy. I found if I dialed my own number, I got a blank on the phone, and I could just talk on and on for hours in the blank, and I knew Brent was listening on the other end. I could tell. And he actually put Frank O'Neill on the bugs. He put one of my doctors on the bugs. So how'd you figure this out? I just figured it out by observing my world around me and how people were reacting. I could tell. So I was telling Brent on the bugs, I said, Brent, all of these doctors your Lori McBride got my chiropractor. She got my naturopath. I can't mail complaints about them to the credit card companies to dispute the charges. It takes 3 weeks, and then all the letters get lost. I said, man, this girlfriend of yours is good. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought, and then what really stumped me was in December 99, I went in for my annual mammogram, and the doctor called me to this dark office. He looked really spooky. He said, Gail, I just need to tell you that you have calcium deposits on your right breast, and we need to go in and do a biopsy. He says, I don't mean to scare you, but we need to go in and do a biopsy just to make sure that it's not breast cancer. Well, at this point, I'd already been contaminated. I mean, I already had a bad experience with 2 doctors already, so I wasn't sure I could trust this one. And I was afraid he was going to do something to me in that operating room. So I said, does it have to be general anesthesia? Can you do local anesthesia? He says, oh, it has to be general, and we need to do this right away, like within 2 days. Well, that made me really suspicious. You got to remember, I just had my neck injured by some criminal Jesuit. Well, I didn't realize it was Jesuit. I thought they were criminal Lori McBride doctors. So I said, I don't know. I have to think about this. I mean, they can't make you do a biopsy for cancer, you see. And I was more scared of Lori McBride at this point in my life because she'd already tried to burn my mobile home down. And she already got several doctors. So and she got the credit card companies because I wrote them letters and, everything. I was getting the runaround everywhere. And I was now in Seattle, and I had just been ripped off by 2 criminal doctors who made me sick and tried to induce psychosis in me by doing something to my neck. So I said, I got to think about this. Well, I went home and prayed, and I said, I said, God, I just feel so overwhelmed by this woman. I mean, she almost burned my home down. I was in crutches, and I had 9 stitches in my left knee when she tried to burn down my mobile home. It was like the whole thing was planned in advance. And if my son wasn't there to put out the fires, I may not be alive talking to you right now. So this is what I had just gone through. I was in crutches and stitches when my mobile home was about to catch on fire, and I knew Brent Spiner wouldn't do this. So I went to God in prayer, said, God, and I heard this still small voice in my head say, your enemy is the Roman Catholic Church. Lori McBride is a Vatican agent, and I believe that was the voice of Jesus Christ. Well, I got on my wiretap phone at 2 in the morning, and I said, Brent, that girlfriend of yours is a Vatican agent. That's the reason we haven't been able to stop her. That's the reason that even though you've allowed her to live in your house, and he did allow her to live in the house, though Brent tells me he was wearing a football helmet when he'd go down the stairs because she'd try to hit him with fry pans on the way down. And after I dumped Brent as a lover for Franco Nero, Brent allowed Lori to live in his house, probably to babysit her, just to keep her out of trouble. And it didn't work because, you know, we didn't know it, but she's a Jesuit. So she was part of a massive conspiracy, and she was just a pawn in the whole conspiracy. And I said, the reason you can't control your girlfriend, even though you let her live in your house, is because she's a Vatican agent. And I cried for 3 hours. And I reinstated Brent Spiner. And I told Franco, I said, Franco, I'm so sorry that I might have wasted your time like this, but I've been wrong to Brent. I have been too hard on him. I didn't realize that his girlfriend was a Vatican agent. And I realize now that he's loved me the whole time, and he's put up with this girlfriend as he's trying to protect me. And that's why he's had her. And so I reinstated Brent Spiner when I figured out Lori was a Vatican agent. Well, after that, all hell broke loose. I got a call from that clinic, said, we need to take you in for a biopsy right away. I said, no. I said, I don't want general anesthesia. I said, I'm gonna get a second opinion. That's what I told them. I didn't trust doctors at this point, not after what I'd been through. And then what was really strange is that in January of 2000, I asked Brent to expose his girlfriend as a Vatican agent on the Los Angeles news. Well, the next day, an Alaska Airlines jet crashed head down right off of Port Hueneme, California, and I figured out that the Jesuits did that to eclipse any news coverage about Lori McBride in the LA news. Apparently, Brent was trying to do that. And I began to get an inkling of this monster organization I was dealing with. I reread all of Jack Chick's stuff on smoke screens and his stuff on Alberto Rivera, the ex-Jesuit preacher. Says, oh boy, that was the Lord who spoke to me in December 99. This Lori McBride really is a Vatican agent. And then in January, it was like everything got contaminated. I would go to the stores. I'd go to the commissary and buy carrots, and I'd eat them and get sick. And it was awful. And they started getting my prescription drugs. I wasn't imagining things. Like I would take the prescription drugs, and I would get a reaction that wasn't your atypical reaction for the drug. That was totally off-the-wall reaction. And it was like, I would be fine, then I'd take a prescription drug and catch the flu. It was like, oh. And I believe it's very possible that while they were going on a rampage, contaminating my prescription drugs, the naturopathic supplements that I bought at the store, or my foods, that may have been when they put the very resistant yeast organism into my body. They may have done it with one of the contaminations, because I have a very resistant yeast infection right now that I've been to doctors and everything, and nobody's been able to get rid of this. And I've concluded that only Jesus Christ himself can cure me of this yeast. It's very resilient. Nothing works. Nystatin doesn't work. Deflucan doesn't work. Nothing works. It's like the yeast likes these medicines. Nothing works. Right now, I believe I'm on a treatment plan that's working, but I'm getting off the subject. But anyways, the point is, they were contaminating everything. And I was beginning to get an inkling of this monster organization that was in my life. And Brent tried several times to get money to me, too, after I offered to marry him. I could tell he wanted to marry me, but the Jesuits blocked everything. I think he even used Cairo News in Seattle. They had a contest, and I think he was trying to use that to funnel like $1 million to me. And that didn't work. I was observing Brent. You know, I'm a very smart woman, and I was observing him, and I could tell that he was responding to my offer to marry him, and he was trying to make it safe for he and I to get together. But the Jesuits didn't miss a beat, man. They were thorough. Everything he tried to do, they blocked it. It was like bang, 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 and they were fast too. Nothing. He tried to get money to me. They blocked it. He did succeed in helping me with chiropractic expenses because of the neck damage. The chiropractor that I went to in Seattle, he was in Mukilteo. He was very close to me, and I got a really good deal with him where I could see him an unlimited amount of times every month. And I believe that Brent contacted that chiropractor. I was like, I was only paying like $20 a month for unlimited visits. It was too good a deal to have just been. I really believe Brent helped the chiropractor out. What I think he did is he got together with the chiropractor. He says, there's a woman in my life that I really love, and I'm going to give you like financial support if you'll help her, and just give her a really good deal and fix her neck, because that chiropractor is the one who fixed my neck. And so Brent was able to help me a little bit, but he could never give me a substantial amount of help, any amount of help that would make it look like he was the main man in my life. The Jesuits blocked it. So I began to get an inkling of just how powerful the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuit order was. I mean, I'd read about it in Jack Chick, but to be honest with you, when I first read Jack Chick, I had a little bit of doubt. I thought maybe he wasn't completely right. Maybe he was exaggerating how bad these Jesuits are. But after what I'd been through with Laurie McBride in 1999, I said, Jack, if anything, Jack Chick isn't exaggerating. He's understating how powerful they are. And I started reading books like Avro Manhattan's The Vatican Billions, which explain how they are the richest organization in the world. And I look around me at how well they were blocking this Hollywood millionaire celebrity from coming to me. I thought, my God, here I have this millionaire celebrity. I think at that time Brett was a millionaire. I'm not sure. He doesn't have as much money as people think he does. And they were blocking him. I thought, man, this organization's incredibly powerful. And I was getting really discouraged that he would actually be able to marry me. I knew he wanted to, but Laurie McBride and her Jesuit buddies and this organization she belonged to was just too powerful, too smart, and everything we did. And she started increasing her online presence too. Like one thing that I noticed, Brent's a joker, and she was putting fake pictures up of him and her together, saying that they'd appeared at these, making it appear like Brent and her had gone to these events. And this was after I offered to marry him, when I could tell Brent was trying to come out to get me. So I knew the pictures weren't accurate, because I knew that Brent would never love a woman who would try to harm my neck or burn down my mobile home. And this is what she was doing. So I knew he didn't love her, because I knew from my communications with Brent earlier that he was a very kind, sensitive, and tender man. So I figured out that she was a Vatican agent, and she somehow used extortion to get into him. Some sort of, I wasn't sure. I figured it might have been a drug rape or a rape. I didn't know. I was very close. Brent didn't talk to me, but being a smart woman, I figured out a lot of things through deduction. So I knew he didn't love her. So he couldn't love a woman who's this evil. And I would go online and see pictures of him and her together, and I could tell they were doctoring up his pictures to make him look shallow and Playboy-like. Well, Brent even started getting humorous about it, and he actually took one of those pictures, and he took off Laurie McBride's arms and put these really fat elephant arms on her. And that picture made it online. I thought, oh my God, Brent did that. He's doing that to show that they were fake pictures, but it didn't work. Eventually, the Jesuits took those pictures off and replaced them with more believable photos that made her look like the sweet, glamorous, voluptuous Hollywood actress type that Brent just couldn't resist, and that he was having sex with all the time. I thought, oh my God, these Jesuits don't give up. They were plastering fake pictures of him and her all over the internet while he was trying to marry me. And I could tell they were fake, because I knew he didn't like her. He'd never like a woman who was that evil, who was poisoning my supplements and trying to burn down my home. So I was realizing more and more just how brilliant this organization was. Yeah, they would doctor all the photos up. One place where they've taken all these photos up, and in December 1996, I used to, because Brent couldn't talk to me anymore because he had this monster in his life, and I could only talk to him through the bugs on the phone, I would go online and study the internet and try to figure out what was going on with him and Lori McBride. And right after I figured out that she was his girlfriend, when she stole Brent's credit cards and gave herself a public birthday party. And then I read about it in the Houston Chronicle, and that's how I found out about her. That was in June 1996. Well, in December 1996, I saw photos of Brent was going to Germany and England to promote, I think it was Star Trek First Contact at that time. And Franco Nero had just come in my life. And I think Brent went over to Franco's house to bring him some videos and stuff of me because Franco was interested in me. And I looked at the pictures of him and Lori in their Germany photos, and she had this look on her face like this. This real defiant look, like right next to Brent, like she looked like this. And Brent was looking at her like, he was looking at her like she was a viper, like. And I thought something happened when Brent and Lori went to England, because Franco had a home in London. And I concluded that that Lori tried to seduce Franco Nero. And right after that, that's when Brent allowed her to live in his house, because I would read up and they would comment about how they would see Lori going into his house. You know, I was keeping up with him online. And I thought, why in the world would Brent Spiner let this viper into his house when she just tried to seduce Franco Nero? And the only thing I could conclude was he was a coward. Well, anyways, I figured it out later on that she was a Vatican agent. But I'm just telling you, those pictures are all gone. They took them all off, but they were there for about a year. What was really funny is one picture, Lori had a V-neck that went right down to her belly button. And it's funny how the V-neck got gradually higher and higher every month, so that by the time it was 1997, she looked fairly respectable. She didn't look like a whore or an evil seductress anymore. And then now those photos are completely gone. The Jesuits are clever. But I remember those photos. And she was wearing purple lipstick, and she was dressed to seduce. She obviously wanted to go with Brent to England so she could get Franco Nero, because she was a Jesuit, and I was not allowed to have Franco Nero either. They were worried about me, not just about Brent Spiner. So I'm just telling you, this is what I'd figured out all this stuff by 1999. Okay. So I was getting really, really discouraged, because I thought these people are good and they're relentless and fanatical and they don't give up. I was thinking back to that incident with Franco Nero, and all the fake photos were plastered all over the internet of him and Lori, and they were all fake. Because I know Brent's personality. They actually changed his facial expressions to make him look shallow and playboyish. But the real Brent is in his music. If you want to know what the real Brent Spiner is like, listen to his singing. Because that's one area where the Jesuits haven't been able to fake him. Though they'd do it if they could, but they haven't been able to. And I am a firm believer that if you want to know what a person's really like deep inside, listen to them sing. You'll hear the real soul right there. I really believe singing reveals who the person is. The Jesuits can doctor up photographs, and I imagine that they're going to come up with a way to doctor up singing now that I've said this. But so far, all of Brent's singing is the real Brent Spiner. So if you want to know what the real Brent Spiner is like, listen to his music. And it's a sharp contrast to this woman he hangs around with, who's a shallow Hollywood glitter girl type, which when you listen to Brent's music, you can tell that's not his taste. He's a rather private person. He's not really into all this Hollywood glamour junk. So anyways, I'm going to get back on the subject here. The point is, I was getting really discouraged that Brent would marry me. I offered him my hand in marriage in December '99. And it was like one blockade after another. They even created climates in Hollywood to discourage, and that's when the Robert Blake murder trials were coming out. I believe that was connected to me and Brent. They were doing this to discourage Brent from coming to me. This Italian Beretta star, they accused him of murdering his wife. And I thought, that's, The Jesuits have actually created a whole climate in Hollywood to create the impression that all Hollywood stars are shallow sex maniacs that don't show sexual responsibility in their love life, so that if Brent dares to show up and try to get me, then they're going to try to kill me and make it look like Brent did it. And Brent could figure out they were doing this so he wouldn't come get me, because he didn't want to get framed with my murder. So, and I'm not imagining things, because let me tell you what happened. In the summer of 2001, when I just moved to Florida after my divorce, and I had no place to go because Brent couldn't come get me because the Jesuits and Lori blocked him every time. And so I had to stay with my mother. Around the summer of 2001, Lori McBride blew up a woman in a car. And she went and told this, Brent told me about this later. She went and told Brent, she said, guess what? I just blew up Gail in a car because you're trying to go marry her. And I told you I'd kill her if you ever did this. And Brent cried because he thought that was me. And he found out later that was a Lori McBride clone. She blew up one of her clones in the car to scare Brent off from coming to Florida to come get me. But I found out about the car blowing up. I figured it out by deduction. You may say, how's that? Well, whenever the Jesuits do something, they always mirror it in the news. They'll do like a copycat in the news, and so I'd read something in the news, and like I read a news story about a massive car explosion, and Jesuits are like that. The reason they mirror if they do something between me and Brent, they'll make a copycat of it in the news or in a television show that's, maybe a hot show. That's so that if we accuse them of doing the crime, they can say that they're a victim of a conspiracy. That's why they do this. What they do is they'll commit a crime, and then they'll do a copycat crime elsewhere to make it look like they themselves are being a victim of a conspiracy. I don't know if this makes any sense. But they do this all the time. They always have a backup plan. So if Brent did have the courage to come get me, and let's say I ended up getting murdered, and he tried to say the Jesuits did it, they would say, oh, no, it was a Hollywood conspiracy, and you did it. Because look, there was this show that had a car bomb the same day that your wife died, and blah, blah, blah. I could tell they were trying to do this to him. Jesuits always try to make it look like they're a victim of a massive conspiracy, to make it look like they didn't do the crime themselves, but somebody else did. And finally, I was thinking, man, I don't know if Brent's ever going to show up. These people are just too good. What really made me discouraged was 9/11. I really believe that Brent boarded a plane to come to Florida to come marry me on the day of 9/11. And I think the Jesuits were trying to kill Brent Spiner. In fact, they even admitted in one of their websites that Brent did board a plane to try to come to Florida, try to marry me on 9/11. I found out about 9/11 as I had just gotten a job, and I had to report for the urine test at the doctor's office. And on my way to the doctor's office, there was an eerie air all around me, and I could tell something major happened. I remember seeing this water hydrant with water just spewing up 20 feet in the air when I drove by. Like I said, whenever Jesuits do something major, they create copycat incidents all around me to make it look like another conspiracy besides them orchestrated what they did. They do this all the time. Went to the doctor's office, and everybody was just glued to the radio, and I found out that 9/11 had happened. I was so angry. I didn't watch the news any that day. I said, oh, these Jesuits, I bet they're gloating over this one. The Jesuits and the Muslim terrorists are like this. There's definitely a connection between the Jesuits and the Muslim terrorists. The Muslim terrorists and the Jesuits work hand in hand, and I think they've signed some sort of a deal where if the Muslim terrorists succeed in causing anarchy in a country and civil war, so that so that they create a climate in the country that makes it easy for the Jesuits to take over, that the Jesuits will reward the Muslim terrorists for their good deeds. I really believe a lot of Muslim terrorists are Jesuits in disguise. So anyways, after 9/11, I said, you know what? Brent's never going to marry me, not after this. I was really discouraged. I was so angry. I was so angry. I just came to the conclusion after 9/11 that Brent would never marry me, even though I knew he wanted to. I said, that's going to scare him for life. And I thought, you know what? Me and Brent, we got to fight these Jesuits, because if not, they're going to kill us. Now, after 9/11, I could tell that that's what they wanted to do. So I got on the bugs and I said, Brent, you need to talk to President Bush. Tell President Bush. I was starting around 99, I became a very avid news watcher, because I noticed there was a connection between what was happening in the news and what was happening with me and Brent. So I could tell from watching the news that it looked to me like the Jesuits were going to try to implicate Russia or China in 9/11, or they were going to try to use 9/11 as an excuse to start a war between the U.S. and Russia or China. So I said, Brent, I know you're communicating with President Bush. I said, can you please let President Bush know this? Tell President Bush that to warn the Russian leader and the Chinese leader to watch out for their life, because I'm very afraid that the Jesuits may use 9/11 as an excuse to murder or assassinate the Russian or Chinese leader, and then use that to start a war between the United States and China to distract away from them and make it look like, you know, Russia or China did 9/11. And I could tell that President Bush got my message and he acted on it. Well, the next day in the newspaper, I saw a picture of Vladimir Putin. And he looked like he was flirting with me. He had this, it was very handsome face. You can see the picture. Oh, I don't have it. You can see the picture on at my website on the writings page, and where I talk about him. He looked so handsome. And it was really funny. It was love at first sight. I saw Vladimir's picture there, and I thought, I had no idea the Russian president is so handsome. And I fell in love with him for his picture. You say, well, what happened to Brent? It's not that I didn't fall out of love with Brent. Let's just say I added Vladimir Putin in. I came to the conclusion that Brent was never going to marry me. So I just decided to test him out. And I figured, you know what? I noticed that Brent always puts people on my bugs. I knew President Bush was on my bugs. And so I figured he probably added Vladimir Putin and the Chinese leader onto my bugs too. So I said, I'm going to marry the Russian president. I presumed that Vladimir was on my bugs and listening to me. Well, right after I said that, all of a sudden I would read the newspaper and the Russian president decided he was going to make a pioneer visit to the United States. I thought, oh my goodness, he is on my bugs. And all of a sudden, President Bush and Vladimir Putin were all going to schedule all sorts of meetings together. And that's how Vladimir Putin came into my life. Brent Spiner put Vladimir Putin onto the bugs in my house. And there were some in my car, too. Brent was doing this to protect me from the Jesuits. He wanted to monitor me everywhere I went. Because he wanted, you know, because I was his future wife. So Vladimir Putin fell in love with me by listening to me through my bugs. And then I'm sure he managed to get some photos of me and video. I think the bugs actually had showed me in my apartment. I think it was photographic bugs, video bugs, where they could see what I look like. So Vladimir Putin observed me through the bugs, and I think he fell in love with me too. So he was trying to come over in November 2001 to meet me. And I concluded, you know what? He must not be married or he wouldn't be doing this, because I got the impression that he had some honor. I didn't sense that he would betray his wife. And he wasn't married, by the way. Vladimir Putin's wife, her name was Larisa. That's the woman he married in 1983. So don't believe the lies that say that Lyudmila was the woman he married in 1983. Well, to make a long story short, I observed Vladimir and I concluded that he was trying to marry me. It apparently was love at first sight for him too. And But then a newspaper clipping showed up in USA Today. I think it was in at the end of October, very beginning of November. And it said that Russian President Vladimir Putin was coming over to the U.S. for a pioneer visit with George W. Bush at his Texas Crawford Ranch, and that Laura Bush would be escorting Vladimir's wife, Lyudmila, around the ranch. I thought, he has a wife? I was kind of stuck. I thought, boy, maybe I deceived myself. Maybe he isn't on my bugs. But then I noticed how her name was spelled, Lyudmila, and I thought, oh my goodness, it sounds almost like Lori McBride. It starts with an L. It's got an M in there like Lori McBride. I said, the Jesuits picked that name on purpose so that in case this didn't intimidate Vladimir, that's how I figured out that that wasn't his wife, because of the name Lyudmila. I thought Lyudmila and Lori McBride, the names sound too similar. And I was right. And what really cinched it for me is when Vladimir did come over in November 2001, the Jesuits, in case Vladimir decided to be courageous and come claim me as his wife, they decided to give him a good scare tactic like they did with Brent Spiner. They crashed a jet that took off from Queens, and just about everybody died on that jet. And that was like 24 hours before Vladimir's plane was to land at Washington, D.C. to meet President Bush. I thought, oh my God, here we go again. I said, Lyudmila is Vladimir Putin's Lori McBride, and now they're going to start crashing jets again like they did the Alaska Airlines jet with me and Brent. Now they're going to do it with, and I thought, oh my God, man, here we go again. I thought, oh no. So, well, maybe Vladimir will be brave and he won't. Well, to make a long story short, Vladimir hasn't been much braver than Brent Spiner. In fact, anyways. Folks, that's how Vladimir came in my life. But what happened with me and Vladimir is I really did fall in love with him, and he fell in love with me. And starting from 9/11 onwards, he and I developed a relationship through the bugs in my room. He could see what I look like, and he could hear me talk, but he wasn't able to talk back to me until 2003 when Vladimir discovered brain-to-brain communications. But I would try to mail him letters, though I don't know if he got them. I think most of our communication was through the bugs. So, but I could tell he was listening. I could tell when I watched the news, because he would kind of react in the news, so I could tell. But mostly he was listening to me, and I was trying to find ways to get to him, and he was trying to come to me, and every time, just like the Jesuits did with Brent Spiner, they blocked it every time. And they started really pushing that Lyudmila was his wife in the news. And I figured out that President Bush was not our friend. Because after a while, around 2002, I said, Vladimir Putin, I think you're too buddy with President Bush. And I can tell that President Bush does not support my love for you or yours for me, and that he's behind this Lyudmila junk you're doing. I figured that out, and I was right. Because let me tell you what happened. The reason Vladimir Putin had Lyudmila is because right after 9/11, when Vladimir Putin fell in love with me and he wanted to marry me, the Jesuits scared President Bush. I think the Jesuits threatened to harm President Bush's wife, Laura Bush, if Vladimir wouldn't play the Lyudmila game and so I think President Bush laid down the law with Vladimir Putin. He said, Vladimir, I don't want my wife, Laura Bush, to be harmed by the Jesuits, because they already put her name in USA Today in association with your wife. He says, I realize you're a widower and that your wife died in 2000, but you're going to play this game or else I'm going to declare war on Russia. And I think that's what President Bush told Vladimir Putin. And President Bush said, I want you to legally marry Lyudmila Putin and make her your wife, or else Russia and the United States are going to be at war. And I think President Bush lied to Vladimir and said this, because I could tell, because Vladimir and President Bush actually seemed to kind of get along. So I was kind of confused about Bush, but I think he kind of lied to Vladimir and led him on. I think this is what he did. He said, Vladimir, I tell you what, I want you to legally marry Lyudmila so that we can pacify the Jesuits, and then I'll see if we can work around this and find a way for you to be with that woman you love. And I think he told Vladimir this, and Vladimir believed him. But as the years went on, Vladimir figured out that President Bush was just leading him on and that he wasn't really trying to help Vladimir marry me. And then by the time 2004, 2005 rolled around, and then 2006, I got really discouraged about Vladimir. And I thought, you know what? Vladimir's not going to come marry me either. The Jesuits have already got it entrenched in the, and then they brought up the Alina Kabaeva junk, which was one of their agents, by the way, to cement even more in the public mind that that Vladimir Putin was married to Lyudmila. And I thought, oh my God, the whole world thinks that that's the woman he married in 1983. And I knew he'd never gone to bed with her. He just played this game because he thought that's how he could get me without having a war with the United States. So I dropped him as a lover. And I said, Vladimir, I just told Vladimir through the bugs, Vladimir, I'm going to reinstate Brent Spiner because you're not any braver than Brent is. And I just went back to Brent in 2006, February 2006. And right after that, Brent made Dreamland. You can see connections between my life story and actions taken by my men. And I kind of shoved Vladimir off to the side, and Brent Spiner became my brain-to-brain lover. Vladimir's the one who introduced me to brain-to-brain loving, but then I started using it with other men, with Brent Spiner next. I was faithful to Vladimir, though, from 2001 to 2006. He was the main man in my heart. And even though I loved Brent, I wasn't making love to him in any manner. I was just keeping him as a friend. So poor Brent got kind of shuttled off to the side. And it wasn't that I lost my feelings for Brent. I just never thought he'd marry me. And I needed a man to marry me because I wanted to have a good husband. And I was in love with Vladimir. So anyways, when Vladimir didn't show up by 2006, I thought, oh my goodness, he isn't going to show up either. I said, let's give Brent another chance. Well, Brent took it because he was still crazy about me. And he made Dreamland right afterwards. But poor Vladimir, about a year later, because I completely ignored him, and even though he was the almighty Russian president, he started getting depressed. He realized now that the whole world thought that Lyudmila was his wife, and I'd given up on Brent back, and he got depressed. And I figured this out when I didn't have the internet at this time, even though I had it in the 90s when I was married. When I got on the internet in, I think it was 2010, and saw Vladimir again, I thought, oh my God, when I shuttled Vladimir off to the side, he actually got depressed. In fact, I even think he made some YouTube videos. There's one out there called, it's up on my Vladimir Putin's Secret Wife page. I watched some of these videos, and I thought, he did that for me, to let me know that he loves me still. And that he didn't want to be shuttled off to the side. So finally I said, oh dear, what am I going to do, Lord Jesus? I don't want to be an adulterous woman. But when I took Brent back and shuttled Vladimir off, Vladimir got depressed because he doesn't want Lyudmila. I thought maybe Vladimir decided to settle for Lyudmila, the one he was legally married for, and I decided to let him have her because he wasn't going to come get me, and I wanted a man who'd come get me and who meant business. But I was wrong about him because when I got online and looked at some of his photos, I could tell that he felt like he was stuck in a trap in a marriage to a woman that he couldn't stand. That the whole world thought that was his wife. And I thought, oh my God, I've quit making love to him brain to brain, and he wants to kill himself. So anyway, that's the reason the marriage list started. I found that once a man experienced me, they usually didn't want another woman. And if I shuttled them off and forgot about them, they got depressed. I thought, oh Lord, what am I going to do? I said, I can't marry more than one man, but when I shuttle them off and put them away, they get depressed. And so I reinstated Vladimir. I said, okay, Vladimir, because Lord Jesus is going to have to forgive me on this, but I can't stand seeing you depressed. So I decided to have Vladimir and Brent both. And Brent said that's cool with me, Gail, because I have a lot of respect for Vladimir because he's helping us fight the Jesuits, and we'll just work together as a team. And that's how the marriage list got started. And the other people, guys that hated the Jesuits as much as we did and who wanted to help us in our fight, but who also liked me, they got added on, and that's how the marriage list got started. That's how Vladimir Putin came in my life, folks. And if you want to say that Vladimir and I are committing adultery, you got to understand the Jesuits have made things so complicated. He's never gone to bed with Lyudmila. I'm telling you how the woman came into his life. He was extorted into it by President Bush under threat of war with the United States. And so, I actually asked Jesus Christ about this. I said, Jesus, the Jesuits are accusing me of being a loose woman because I've got all these guys on the marriage list and because I've had brain-to-brain sex with about 5 or 6 of them, even though I've got a list of about 40. I don't get why they all want me. I tell them, hey, you're wasting your time with me. I can't marry 40 guys. Why don't you just go off and go get some woman who's more available? But they don't want to leave. They want to stay. Apparently, they really respect me for having the courage to take on the Jesuit empire, and they want to help me. And they respect my courage, and they think I'm gorgeous and a hot woman, and they want to stay on the list. What can I say? It wasn't my idea. It was Brent and Vladimir's idea. But folks, that's how Vladimir got there, okay? It started with 9/11 when I got discouraged about Brent Spiner, and he doesn't want to leave. He wants to be there, and he was heartbroken when I kind of shoved him off to the side. He may be the almighty Russian president, but he's got feelings just like any other man. He doesn't want to be married to a man for political reasons. I mean, married to a woman for political reasons. And that's all his marriage to Lyudmila was. It was a political marriage to prevent a war between Russia and the United States. And he's never gone to bed with her. And I'm just making this video to defend Vladimir Putin. My experience with Vladimir is he's a courageous, honorable man. He has a strong sex drive. He's a very passionate, virile, sensual, physical lover. And the Jesuits have, and so he requested that I send him some nude photos of me because he said, Gail, I'm going through hell fighting these Jesuits, and I risk my life every day fighting them. And if I could just see your nude body, that gives me encouragement, and that's why I sent him nude videos. Actually, Brent sent them to him. I write to Brent, and then Brent sends Vladimir photos and stuff of me. So, folks, that's how Vladimir Putin came in my life, okay? My experience with Vladimir is he's a courageous, brave man. He's a good man. And he has loved me from the depths of his soul since September 2001. And I have filled the void in his life after his wife, Larisa, died. He was heartbroken when she died. In fact, I've tried to interview Vladimir about the death of his wife, Larisa, because I wanted to make a movie about him. He cried so much. He said, Gail, I'm not up to it. I can't do this right now. Maybe later. Just do Brent's movie first. So Vladimir's got feelings. He may be a president, but he doesn't like being in a political marriage, and I'm going to stand by him. He's number 2 on my marriage list after Brent Spiner. And, I had moral scruples about having this list of men. So I tried to make Brent my one and only back when I reinstated him, and I shuttled Vladimir off to the side. And then I found out Vladimir got really depressed about it. I said, well, I still have feelings for Vladimir. So I decided, well, I'll just nurture both of them. I said, Lord, I can't do this to Vladimir. The whole world thinks he's married to that Lyudmila, and he played this whole stupid game because of me. And now if I desert him, he's going to go kill himself. So that's why Vladimir's there too.